Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending our Questline webinar, Financial Impact of the Coronavirus on Small Businesses. My name is Maureen Murkey, and I am the technical producer of today's webinar. Before we begin, we want to cover a few housekeeping items. To the left of your screen are multiple application widgets you can use. Most of the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most of your desktop space. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A widget, which is directly below the presentation window. We will try to answer all questions during the webcast, but if a more in-depth answer is needed or we run out of time, they will be answered later via email. Some networks may cause slides to advance more slowly than others, so logging off your VPN is recommended. If your slides do fall behind, pushing F5 on your keyboard will refresh the page. If you do experience any other disruptions during the broadcast, please use the Q&A widget for any technical questions. We'll be sending everyone a follow-up email within the next few days, which will include a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation and the playback link to the recording of today's webinar. We will also be conducting poll questions during the presentation and would greatly appreciate your participation. Please be aware that you are not the only participant today. The names of the other attendees are not being shown to you for privacy. Now, let me introduce today's hosts. Mike Carter is a senior engineer for Questline. Mike has a bachelor's in engineering and an MBA degree from The Ohio State University. He is also a certified energy manager. Mike has worked with various epicenters supporting electro-technology applications and spent 10 years conducting due diligence for technology commercialization. At Questline, Mike writes articles for newsletters, answers Ask an Expert inquiries, and develops webinars on energy topics. And now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mike, who will introduce our guests and get things started for us today.
Well, thank you, Maureen, and good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us in this first webinar in our new series we're calling Plugged In. So we're going to cover a number of topics over the next several months, but today we're going to be specifically investigating how small businesses are weathering the coronavirus pandemic. As most of you know, Questline has been helping utilities develop COVID messaging strategies since the beginning of the pandemic. In the spring and throughout the summer, we focus a lot on energy efficiency in the work from home environment and some related programs like My Account, paperless billing, and payment assistant options. As businesses started to reopen, our content also included health and safety information for returning employees and customers. Now, the crisis is far from over, unfortunately. Businesses continue to deal with the economic fallout of the pandemic, especially as some assistance and deferral programs come to an end. And they're going to continue to look to their energy utilities for support throughout the winter. So today's forum hopefully will guide us as we prepare strategies to help small business customers through the next phase of the crisis. Now, we're very pleased to have a representative from the Small Business Administration joining us, who's going to help us understand the struggles, needs, and health of small businesses. And we also are very excited to have a guest from AEP Ohio who will share how they have served their small business customers in this environment and what changes their energy utility made to do so. So let me formally introduce our guest speakers. We originally had hoped to have Rob Scott, Regional Administrator for the U.S. Small Business Administration, and we may have him join us. He's making a presentation on the West Coast, and it's going a little long. But pinch hitting for him very ably today is Andrea Rabker, who's Regional Communications Director for the SBA Great Lakes region. They oversee the agency's operations and mission of helping small businesses to start, to grow, to expand and recover throughout 6 states, including Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. So excited to have SBA on board with us today. Also, Katie Grayem has oversight for the customer service organization at the AEP Ohio that handles residential and community customers, as well as the key account management team assigned to commercial and industrial customers. Katie previously had responsibility for the communications team and the customer design organization that supported customers with new service installation needs. She today has the lead role also in the organization's customer experience strategy related to key customer interactions for the company's approximately 1.5 million customers. So our format today is going to kind of look like this. We're going to have each guest give an overview of their organization in turn. Then we'll ask each of them some questions related to small business clients, and then we'll open up the floor for questions from you, the audience. So at any time, just click on that question mark box, type in any questions you might have about anything that Andrea, Rob, or Katie might have discussed, or just any question you might have, and we'll pick those up here toward the end of the presentation. So we're going to start with, however, a poll question. We'd like to know, what is your job stress level right now? We got 5 choices here. Pick the one that best describes you, all the way from maybe you're at the low end, low stress. We're using song titles creatively here. Kokomo, we'll take it slow, up to maybe you're at number 5. I'll go crazy if I don't go crazy tonight by U2. And so I'm going to go ahead and launch that now. Appreciate you participating in our polls, and we really want to have a feel for where you're at right now. This pandemic's taken a toll on everyone, and go ahead and pick the one that best fits you today. And then I'll share that here in just a second once I feel like most of you have jumped in on that. So 1 through 5, which one best fits you today? And we have a little over half of you now responding. Appreciate again. We're going to have a couple more polls here in just a little while on some other topics, but this is an important one, and it helps our speakers just get a feel for where you're at and how best we can work together to help our small business customers. All right, I'm going to push this results out so you can see that the majority of you are kind of in that numb or slightly less. I wish this were over now. We can all understand that. A few of you, of course, hit the bell here with the hammer. I'll go crazy if I don't go crazy tonight. We can understand that as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and have Andrea pick up the baton here and give an overview of what's going on with the SBA and how they're helping small business customers.
Great, thank you, Mike. And I'm with, I think, most of the audience here between 3 and 5, and that's in part though because Linkin Park and U2 are 2 of my favorite bands. So I don't know, part of it's music and part of it's this is where I'm at. But anyway, so just a quick overview, as you said, that we would be providing is how the SBA responded to small businesses. I understand that most people on here have small businesses as their clients, so they're likely familiar with these 3 programs you're seeing here on the screen. In response to the pandemic, Congress passed what's called the CARES Act and created actually 2 of these 3 programs. The first being the Paycheck Protection Program, and if you haven't heard of that, you likely may have been on the island, right, with the Beach Boys or what have you. But that was designed to keep employees on payroll. So small businesses, if they had some type of potential economic impact, negative economic impact to their business, this would help keep their employees on payroll. That was the original plan for it. Then as it went through Congress and the bills were updated, it was done quickly. The SBA launched the program within just a couple of weeks, which if you know anything about federal government, that doesn't happen. So we were building the plane as we were flying it and adjusting as is needed in response to and after listening to what the businesses in the marketplace were saying. And so this program went out when it ended on August 8th. with us allocating money to 5.2 million small businesses and nonprofits throughout the country. So, and then all the jobs that those small businesses supported, which if you know anything about small businesses, which I'm sure you all do, as many of them are your clients, they are the economic engine of this country. They create 2 out of every 3 jobs. So the ability to save jobs within small businesses is huge. And again, with the bipartisanship of Congress to pass this, we went into action. So that's the Paycheck Protection Program. Also with Congress came the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance. That was a program that piggybacked onto what you'll see in the next slide, onto one of SBA's traditional loan programs, which happens when the SBA goes in to help people recover from a disaster. This is how the government initially responded prior to the PPP coming through via the CARES Act. And the advance was just a little bump to give to people anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 to just help out, essentially. So that came through the CARES Act as well. And then the SBA also offered debt relief. So let me just take a couple steps back on what the SBA does to help you understand why all these loan programs are falling under us, and then also, again, why the financial assistance came from us. So the SBA, as Mike said, helps to start, grow, expand small businesses. It's funded by taxpayer dollars. We're a federal agency. And it's essentially, we like to say you prepay, if you're an entrepreneur, you've prepaid for the services with your taxpayer dollars. So we help to not only educate and guide by providing a bunch of resources, but we also help small businesses who typically wouldn't be able to get money from a bank, get money from the bank. And the way that we do that is by reducing the risk for the bank. So we guarantee, the federal government guarantees the loan that the bank is going to make to a small business. So then the bank isn't taking on this huge or potentially huge risk in funding this business, and that the business may not survive, or that it won't be able to pay its loan, et cetera. So with this last graphic here, SBA Debt Relief, what we did was pay the loans, pay any loan that had been on the docket, essentially, as an SBA loan to a small business. The SBA made several months of payments for those small business loans. So again, the small businesses could focus on, maybe in some cases, paying their electricity bill, right? So that is, as a whole, how the SBA has responded up until and through August 8th. Now, what's still going on are these 4 programs, 3 of which are our traditional program. Oh, no, actually, all of them are our traditional programs. Specifically, the first one, the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, through the end of 2020, so December 31st, any small business, and money is still available in this program, can apply for an economic injury disaster loan. Again, it's based around what the CARES Act was based around. Obviously, you're experiencing some type of negative operational revenue generating negativity toward your operations or revenue generating. So you can get a loan. They're very low interest loans, I believe it's 3%, up to a 30-year term. So to get that loan to carry a business through whatever period of time they may need, that's the purpose of these loans. And again, traditionally, they're done in response to a natural disaster, so a hurricane, tornado, something like that, to rebuild. But in this case, with the economic injury that's being caused and the disruption being caused by the pandemic, that for the first time, I believe, in the history of the SBA, fell into this category. What else is going on is our traditional SBA-backed lending. I covered that a little bit earlier. They're highly positive terms for a small business. And again, it lowers the risk for the bank, so it's positive for the banks, and then it's also positive for the small business in that it can get the capital to start, grow, expand, or recover. And we are seeing a lot of small businesses. In fact, we had a equal year, fiscal year 20 compared to fiscal year 19 with regard to this lending. You would think right now, oh, small businesses aren't going after this traditional type of lending, but they are, because some of them are making PPE, some of them are transitioning and going digital, and it's a whole new way of their business, and they're growing as a result because they've been able to pivot like most entrepreneurs can do. So the traditional SBA-backed lending still stands. Then also our other ongoing assistance is our no-cost business advising. This is kind of where I was saying you prepay. The SBA supports resource partners across the nation that are helping people not only with rewriting their business plans, their pro formas and everything else, but also with what forms are needed to respond to this PPP, this loan that I got, or how do I pivot and go digital when normally I've just been having my retail storefront? What do I do now because people aren't coming in? And then last but not least, we also have other support on exporting and government contracting. The government is mandated to allocate 23% of its contract dollars to small businesses. And so we support and help small businesses get those contracts. So this is another opportunity during this time where small businesses can grow. And same thing with exporting. Again, we have financing behind that. We also have grants that go to every state across or a majority of states across the nation to help small businesses enter a new market. 2/3 of the world's consumers are outside of the U.S., so it's a perfect place for people to expand their business. Is beyond our borders. And I think, one last thing. So what are we doing now? What's happening in the future? So those are what we're doing now. As far as how to stay in touch or find out about what the SBA is doing and can help your clients and or a small business owner that you know, the best place is our website, sba.gov. We also have e-newsletters that all of our district offices, we have 68 district offices across the nation. In Ohio alone, we have 2. We also have a branch office in Cincinnati and one in Dayton as well. So we're quite well covered in Ohio. They send out e-newsletters with tips, tricks, and everything else. I would highly encourage that if you know someone to have them sign up for these e-updates, and then also follow us on social media. There's a lot of things that go out last minute, or people are waiting for something. That's the quickest way we get things out. It's on Twitter, also on Facebook and Instagram. But as far as what's coming down the line, we believe and have seen that Congress is ready to act on some sort of additional stimulus. What that will be, we don't know. But we expect, because there was money in the program, that certain segments of the small business world, the 32 million, will get additional funding. It's highly likely it will be hospitality related, restaurants, those that have been very, very, very much so affected. Those likely will get we believe, again, we don't know until Congress acts, will get a dedicated bucket of money, So that's coming. Also, what's coming with the SBA is an online portal for entrepreneurs to understand. It's specifically built around women, but it's also to help them understand how to expand and grow their business, and that will all be online. First thing that SBA has ever done like that. And then also, currently, this is offered in English, but coming in Spanish, and as well as a program we have called an online portal we have called Lender Match, which allows a small business to go in and say, okay, I need money. My bank won't give it to me as I stand now. With the SBA's help, I can likely get it. I need a lender to help me figure that out. And that's called Lender Match. So it's available in English right now, but it's coming in Spanish. So those are some quick highlights of what's coming. And with the news as it is today, whether or not the administration is changing, we likely will see more changes, with either that remaining the same or changing coming soon.
Great. Well, thanks, Andrea. Great job pinch hitting. I know I learned quite a bit more than I knew about SBA's operations. So, but now, Katie, why don't you go ahead and take control of the presentation, advance to the next slide, and we'd love to hear more about how you work directly through the struggles of the pandemic at AEP Ohio. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mike. Hopefully you can see my slide now. And so at AEP Ohio, we are headquartered in the Columbus area, just outside of Columbus in Gahanna, Ohio. And we cover about 1.5 million customers, several thousand small business customers. And our goal is really to have that trusted energy provider relationship with our customers. We want to make sure we're being responsive to what their needs are, and we're looking for ways that are win-win opportunities that the customers can use services and programs that we offer to help them grow and build in the communities that we serve. We also see our role as an education and an informative role with our customers to help them understand what programs not only that we offer, but that are available to them. And that was something that we really played upon here when COVID first hit and businesses started seeing the economic impact of that. We really were trying to stay very active to help find ways for our customers to meet their financial obligations and to keep the lights on, as they say. So some of the ways that we did this, we tried to meet customers where they were and use a multi-channel outreach. We, of course, put bill messaging. That's the easiest and quickest thing for us to do. We tried to continue to tell customers about past due balances and actually even share with them the disconnect date that would be in place if we were not in a moratorium in Ohio. We did have from March until September, we were in a disconnect moratorium, but we gave the customers that same information so that they could see if they weren't able to pay, and many weren't, especially in those very small businesses, they could still see what was kind of building up and what the implications would be for that when the moratorium ended. We also pivoted our collection calls from a little less of a pay us now mentality to more of a courtesy call reminder and offering of assistance and enrollment in payment plans. For the first time, we had not previously offered any kind of payment plan options for our non-residential customers. And so with that expansion, we wanted to make sure we were educating our customers on that. We also leveraged a number of communication channels, including our Questline newsletter. And we had links in that newsletter to websites that we had created that was specific to Corona and impacts. And then we had a business page, and we saw a pretty significant click-through rate from that e-newsletter to our business assistance page. And on the business assistance page, we offered reminders about, of course, payment programs and energy savings tips. We also referred customers to our business call center, where we had a dedicated unit that had some specialized training on the PPP and the CARE Act type programs. So not to replace, obviously, their relationships with their banks and the SBA, but to just make sure they had a place and to try to link back the fact that they could use that funding to pay their utility bills. We also reached out to Chamber of Commerce contacts and a variety of business associations to just make sure they also had this information and they knew that AEP Ohio was a resource for their members. I mentioned our website, social media campaigns. We did promote some specific emails, and those were focused actually on energy usage. Our web portal allows both our residential and our non-residential customers to log in and see interval data, usage data, as well as energy savings tips. For the commercial customers, there's actually data they can drill down and see kind of impacts and some disaggregation to try to see if there are some processes at their facility that maybe are taking on higher energy than would be expected, to try to do some investigation. We implemented a number of different methods where customers could enroll in payment plan options. So our web, our IVR, and even text payment plan enrollment. So that was some new things and innovative things, at least for AEP Ohio, in dealing with this customer segment. This slide shows some images of just some of the material that we used in our bill inserts and in our social media campaigns to try to catch people's eye. And you know, if you're a small business and you're suffering economic loss or you're not even open, you have a lot of worries on your mind. Your electric is just one of them. So we tried to make sure that while we maintain an empathetic tone, we were also trying to get customers' attention. So I mentioned a few ways that we provided support. Another feature that we did is we waived credit card fees. So in our utility, the currently to pay by credit card, it does have a cost. But during this period, in order to just try to make sure customers were finding any way they could to stay current on their bills, we did waive credit card fees. We also waived deposit requirements because that typically is a problem for a lot of small businesses anyways, and during these times, that could be really a make or break type of situation. I mentioned the energy dashboard. This is a kind of a preview of that. You can see that it talks about usage over time. It compares year over year consumption. Some of these models, as Corona has waged on longer, and people have been dealing with this, now working from home, and just a whole different shift in how their businesses are running. Some of the comparator information over year may not be as valuable, but it still provides insight to what they might see going forward, in their bills, and think of ways that they may need to adjust for that. So I think, I guess that one of the comments that I would want to say with our payment plan, this was our first experience with the non-residential customers and payment plans, and we saw something that I thought was pretty interesting. Unlike our residential population, who seem to be most inclined to take longer payback periods, 9 months, 12 months, our commercial customers really seem to just want to kind of try it out. And to me, that's a sign of optimism, wanting to really, the sweet spot was about the 3-month payback period. So that's just some information that, you may find helpful as well.
Great. I appreciate that. These have definitely been trying times, and it's great to hear the firsthand experience of what you've dealt with at AEP. You've heard from Andrea, you've heard from Katie. Type in any questions you have about what they've discussed, some of the comments they made, maybe you'd like some clarification, and we'll get to those here in just a little bit. But next up, we're going to launch another poll, and this poll has to do with you as the audience, being a utility audience. What level of involvement has your utility had with the Small Business Administration in the past year? We've got 4 choices here. It could have been none at all. Maybe you just know who your local SBA representatives are, or maybe you promoted SBA services in one form or another, bill inserts or new newsletters, etc. Or maybe you've gone so far as to conducting joint programs with the SBA. So give us a little feedback there on what your experience has been thus far. Again, we appreciate you participating in the polls. We'd like as many as possible to give us that feedback, and then we'll share that with everyone here in just a second. Before we move on, we've got some questions Questline would like to ask each of our speakers today. Looks like we've got about a third of you answering this poll so far. I'm going to just give it another few seconds and let us know your interaction with your regional SBA office. I'm going to go ahead and show those results here. Looks like some of you have promoted SBA services. Some of you do know who your SBA representatives are, which is highly recommended. And but a lot of you really haven't had much interaction. So we're going to explore that here just a little bit more. So I've got some questions for each of you. And I'm going to start with Andrea. And Andrea, if we launch this same poll we had at the beginning about the stress level for the small businesses out there, that 1 to 5 stress level, what would they probably, how would they respond? Where would they be right now in terms of those stress levels? And also, what do you feel like their trajectory is here? Is it easing up on them? Is it declining? Is it getting better? Or is it actually, it's just getting worse?
So is there like a 6 or a 10?
Okay.
I would think that most people, and I would say probably most people here, their clients would say the same, that it's the what we've seen in roundtables. So we've done roundtables throughout Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois, listening to small business owners, trying to understand, because that's our role, to advocate for them, take that back to DC, and then share, here's what's going on in the marketplace and what needs to be done, or what we think will help. So I would say there's still optimism, a little bit to the point of what Katie said with regard to, and this is the unique and beauty of entrepreneurs, that they're in it to win it. And they will do what they can, I think, to survive. And we've seen that across the region. And so as far as their stress level, I don't know if it ever goes down, to be honest with you, just knowing myself as being a former small business owner and things like that. But I think it's one they've never seen before, and they are encouraged by the fact that there may be more stimulus coming, but they're also sitting in reality, seeing that, so I'm in Chicago. Here in Chicago, the only option to dine in right now is to dine outside. Well, we're the Windy City. It gets cold here. So they're recognizing that that's, some cases, in some ways, that's not going to work. So they've got to continue being innovative, as entrepreneurs always are, to maintain and continue forward. Do we expect some closures? Yes. It's just the nature of, number one, being a small business, but also number two, with the pandemic on top of it, there potentially could be higher closures. So I think there's that stress level too. And do I continue to push forward with my lifelong dream? How do I balance it all? And then we all have, equally so, the stress at home. So my kids are at home. I've got to teach. I've got to cook dinner for them. I've got to do this. I got to keep them occupied. So I think it just compounds one on top of the other. And that's the most challenging, not only for small business owners, but for, I think, everyone. And just a quick point back to the utilities. Now, the PPP was available for small utilities as well. So I am kind of curious if anyone knows if their own company now would have had to fit certain parameters, took advantage of that. But that's a whole separate thing. And if people need the SBA to come in and talk and educate, we're always here. That's, it's like I said, prepaid.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrea. And Katie, I've got a question for you. The question is, what kind of a relationship does your utility want with small business customers? In other words, when your small business customers hear the name AEP Ohio, what is it that you want to come to their mind?
Yeah, I think that, going back to the trusted energy advisor, that really is the kind of catchphrase that we want to achieve. But really, just being a resource and making sure that we understand what our customers need from us. Certainly, the foundational, they need power and they need it to be reliable and they need it to be affordable. But beyond that, what other programs and services can we offer, whether it's financing, as we focused on during the COVID time, or energy management and information that way. Electrification opportunities, that's really something in that we are starting to focus on now and going forward. Opportunities for a win-win with efficiencies through electrification. So I hope that our customers, and I think our survey responses tend to support the fact that our customers see us as a resource in the communities that they serve and that we serve.
Okay. A second question for you, Katie. You mentioned your utility has reinstituted service shutoffs and late bill letters. How's that gone? Have you gotten more pushback than you thought from reinstituting that, or less, or about what you expected, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly not an easy time for anyone. Mid-September is when that process started, and we didn't know what to expect. Some of our AEP, the parent company, operates utilities in 11 different states, and some of those states had already started back with disconnects, and they kind of didn't see any major bumps, and we were not sure what to expect, but fortunately, I think that it went off as good as could be expected, and we saw some industries hit harder than others. The small real estate, daycare, health services, beauty services, gyms, those kind of smaller entrepreneur type companies. We did see a bigger percentage of commercial disconnects coming from those segments. But it's stabilized. It took a little bit more than a month, and at this point, we're really not seeing much difference in our disconnects than we did, a similar time last year. So I guess that's a good sign. Again, there are many companies in our area that have truly benefited, been able to expand their businesses to try to accommodate some of the unique supply needs that have resulted from COVID. So we've seen the uptick of that as well.
Okay, fantastic. I see that some of you are submitting some questions for them. I appreciate that. Keep that going. I've got a few more here. I'm going to go back to Andrea here. Andrea, what barriers are small businesses facing in fully reopening? What are you seeing out there?
The pandemic.
Yeah.
I think it really is coming down to local legislation. And then also it is so there's word that vaccines are now available. But if you look at countries across the world, if you look at Korea, if you look at New Zealand, there was no vaccine in place, yet they figured out how to manage the coronavirus. So I guess there's hope with the vaccine, but there's also work that needs to be done so that, I would say that's their biggest hurdle right now is once this is solved, once that the coronavirus is solved, they will be able to move forward. But in the meantime, as I was saying earlier, they're adjusting and figuring it out. And both us and our resource partners, and we're all trying to work together to ensure that as many can figure that out so that when they're ready to open, they're ready to open. And they're, in the meantime, their business plans, their performance, their financials, whatever it is they need to operate are in place and their expectations are appropriate so that they know where they'll stand whenever this is over. So, and then, like I said, the variance of, in some, I think, small towns, there are no restrictions or the restrictions are much fewer. And in other, like here in Chicago, we're essentially shut down almost for 30 days. I think Franklin County just came out today with some more warnings or what have you. So that I really think is their biggest hurdle is this coronavirus.
Yeah. And again, you've touched on this, and I'd like, of course, it's your opinion, but do you feel like we're at the beginning of the end or just the end of the beginning of the pandemic impact on small businesses?
Yeah, so this is definitely my personal opinion.
Yeah.
there's a lot of hope, and I am one who lives more on hope than on despair. So I would like to say that, like I said, we've seen countries come out of this already across the world. So yet we have others that are raising. But now we have a vaccine coming. We've seen a lot of adjustments that have been made on operations. We've seen businesses innovate and change in response. So to me, that gives me hope. That means that people aren't quitting. They're not giving up. So I think so we, at the beginning of, I can't remember what you exactly asked me, but I think we're looking toward the end more than we are anything else.
Okay, so certainly the end of the beginning, kind of maybe in the middle. So it is hard to tell, but at least we have some resources available to help in the best we can. So, and Katie, I'm going to ask you a question. In fact, I'm going to throw this out to everyone at the same time. So the question is to you, Katie, and to everyone else, which delivery channel has been the most effective in communicating with small business customers during the pandemic? And of course, I'd like you, Katie, maybe just to comment a little bit about why you feel the way you do.
Yeah, I'm not sure I could pinpoint one channel being the most effective, because it's really about meeting the customers where they are, and you need to have a multi-channel approach. Our e-newsletter, especially when we had the article that linked to our COVID and business assistance page, that was a very successful click-through rate, and we saw good results. I think that our call centers have been a source for customers as well. And actually, something that we've experienced, I'm sure other utilities probably had similar experiences. We had to pivot pretty quickly to work from home for our call centers. That was not a normal culture at AEP Ohio. And very quickly, we got up to about 85% of our agents working from home. And we were worried what that impact would be on call wait times and ASA and so forth. And in fact, the call volume seemed to drop and stayed pretty low for a good part of the summer, really, until the disconnect moratoriums ended. So we were able to use some of those agents to do outbound calls. And that, was another channel we had not leveraged too much in the past. And we saw a lot of response that way. So I'm going to go for all of the above answer.
Okay. And the audience actually agrees with you. Kind of a multi-channel approach. Everyone's seen a little bit of value in a number of different delivery mechanisms and channels. So right on the point there. I'm going to go ahead and start in with some questions from the audience now. And Andrea, I'm going to ask this of you. What % of small businesses are aware of and taking advantage of these financial assistance programs? In other words, are 100% of them jumping on this? Only 10% of them? Or what are you seeing?
So I don't know that I have an exact percentage. I would say that so it really just depended. So for some of the small businesses, they weren't eligible for some of the CARES Act funding because they weren't seeing a decline in business and economic impact. Others leveraged both programs. So we've had some that have both gotten the PPP loans and the economic injury disaster loans, and then have gone on after learning that, there's more services. So kind of to your point a little bit in the beginning, where they were like, I didn't know all this was available, have gone on to then tap our resource partners and say, all right, I'm here now. I had projected to be way over here, but now I'm only going to be here. So what do I need to adjust operationally or business-wise, or do I need to reduce my real estate space, or kind of what Katie's saying, like, what can I do to be more energy efficient so my bills are lower? I mean, it's all of that thought going into things. So I would say that so the PPP program helped 5.2 million. We know 5.2 million loans were approved. In a total in the U.S., there are approximately 32 million small businesses. So again, the small business is defined as 500 employees or less. That was a little altered with the CARES Act because what came into play were subsidiary franchises and things like that, which are individually owned. So there's some difference in that too, and franchises do fall under that SBA as well. So there was a little difference. So I would say at minimum, we were at 15%, 20%. At maximum, I would say, we could go into then farther of the number of loans that were allocated on our traditional side and the number of people our resource partners helped and our webinars that were offered and everything else. And we are now close to tens of millions. So there's been a discussion as was it a success or was it not as far as the programs and things that went into place. But again, it was done overnight, essentially, as I said earlier, building the plane as we were flying it, which is completely non-traditional for the federal government. And then, both sides, in fact, I was just on a conference earlier today, they admit that without the stimulus, we'd be in a completely different place, and I would say a completely more awful place. So there's that benefit. Now, economically, if you talk to an economic expert, they may say, well, the unemployment benefit was better, or this was better, or that was better. But I would say, to your original question, a majority of small businesses have tapped the services, whether it was through our traditional programs that already existed or the stimulus and CARES Act funding. Okay.
All right. Great answer. Very helpful. Katie, got a question for you, and that is, what software does AEP use for the energy dashboards, and how current is the data? Is it updated weekly or daily, hourly, et cetera? Would you happen to know?
Yeah. So we, for our non-residential, our commercial business portal, we use a tool through Uplight. So formerly First Fuel, but they were purchased by Uplight more recently. And we have a different program for our residential through Oracle OPower. But both sites receive feeds. They've received daily feeds. The information is usually updated about 48 hours after it happens. And when it is updated, it is interval data where we have AMI meters. The customer can drill down to 15-minute intervals of information, but it might take 2 days to actually see that past data.
Okay, very good. I believe, Andrea, this question is for you, and it's a simple question. What's PPE stand for? I don't know if that was on your slide about the...
So it was actually what I was saying, and it was actually PPP, so Peter. Yeah. Okay. So Paycheck Protection Program, and that is the element of the CARES Act. That was the loan program. Sorry, I probably should go in a little bit more into that. That was a loan program that was the forgivable loan program that was delivered via the CARES Act that small businesses could tap. But it's no longer open. It closed August 8th per the legislation. Put it open again? Maybe. So, right. Because there was still money left. I think there was about $100 billion left in that bucket of money that was allocated for it when the program closed.
Okay. Katie, over to you. You had talked about your messaging and having empathy in your messaging. And I read a recent article in the Wall Street Journal where the author talked about the difference between compassion and empathy, and compassion being more of a feeling, empathy being more actionable. And one of the things he said that struck me was empathy is very hard to achieve. And so how have you felt that AEP Ohio has achieved a level of empathy in your messaging to small businesses during the pandemic?
Yeah, it is a fine balance because obviously what the customer is buying from us is a necessary, product to run their business, to run their homes. I mean, it's a life empowering service, right? So we have to be careful that we are conveying the feeling that we do care and that we are here to help. And we are, by the way, the regulated utility. They don't have a lot of choice. It's us or no power. And balance that with not being patronizing or making it seem like, pay us or we're going to take away this life-saving and tool. So we used, in my samples in the earlier slide, I think we tried to use photos that showed, people still trying to work. Bike shop was one of them. So that's a small business, it's a purely, a couple people and it's volume and relationships. So we tried to convey with both our images as well as the words that we're here to help. When we pivoted our normal collection calls with just different language about, we understand that COVID may be impacting you, and we wanted to call to see if there was anything that we could do, or if you were aware that we were now offering payment assistance programs. So, it's kind of just letting people know we're there to help.
Okay, very good. I'm going to go ahead and launch another poll here, and that is, what topic do you believe is the most important to your small business customers right now? This is for the audience. And we've got 4 of those plus other, and I might have a second poll to follow up depending on how many people pick other. So we've listed 4 of those. Which of those do you believe is the most important right now to your small business customers? Again, thank you for your participation in the polls. I'd like to get a feel for just the collective thought out there about what is that very important topic that maybe we need to be addressing in our communications or helping in some way. Again, appreciate you jumping on this. Many of you have. We're going to take a look at that here in just a second. And so let me go ahead and push that to the audience. And again, not surprisingly, financial assistance wins the race quite a bit. But, energy savings, return to work, reestablishing their customer relationships are there as well. So again, I appreciate everyone's participation in that. We've got just a couple more minutes here. Let me see if there's any other questions here for either of you.
I can comment on a little bit on this survey question.
Yeah.
Something that we, financial assistance would have probably been my obvious answer even a month ago. But what we're seeing here in Ohio, at least, especially in like Central Ohio and the more populated areas, is this. I don't know if it's even return to work or just keeping employees to be able to stay at work, the quarantining, the exposure, and when one person gets sick, now their entire family, everybody who lives in that house has to stay home for 14 days, even if they don't have any symptoms, which, I understand the health side, but that has implications for all the businesses that the people in that house are supporting by their work and even by their business. They can't go out and do those kind of things. So we're seeing that. I know the healthcare, it's been a big deal here with hospitals and so forth, but I can only imagine a small business, how they struggle with that.
Yeah. And that prompts a question here to Andrea, and that is, Andrea, how did you actually help the businesses apply for these financial assistance programs? Were there regional meetings or newsletter information or some online software? So how did you actually help them, or did you actually physically fill out some of these applications for them?
So no, so I'll go back to what Katie said on this multi-channel approach. The way that the SBA works is, and I know it gets into some of the complexities, but it's important to understand this. The government doesn't loan money directly via the SBA, except for the economic injury loans. Any other type of loan or financial assistance that comes out of the SBA is done through what are called delegated lenders. Typically, we have about 1,800 lenders on our, on our roll as far as offering SBA-backed loans. With the PPP, we ended up approximately 2.5 times that amount, so about 5,000 lenders out there and for the first time, fintech lenders out there and able to provide SBA-backed loans, or in this case, the PPP loans. So as far as what we did, so the work is really between the borrower and the lender because they've been delegated that authority. Because can you imagine suddenly, like, the government doesn't have the power or the personnel to do all that lending, but the banks do, and the banks have the processing available and everything else. That's why the banks do the lending, and we guarantee that lending. So the banks got approved to be lenders for these programs and are approved. And then they did the lending. What we did was again, back to the multi-channel approach, we typically would do like a weekly newsletter about things that went out. They became daily, if not 2 times a day, with open rates that we probably could have never imagined, right? Our Twitter followers are through the roof compared to what they were before. It was, so in part of our communication efforts, we were trying to track as best we could the phone calls we were getting in. We did have to mobilize as well. The federal government typically is not a remote teleworking environment. We all are now, and now they are even considering making some positions permanent, open to that. But so between phone calls, technology, and everything else, we would walk people through this process that I just described. You've got to go to your lender, explain what your needs are. Here's the guidelines that Congress and Treasury and the SBA have provided as to eligibility. You file through your lender works with the SBA to get all those applications in. The loan's approved by the SBA, money goes to your lender, money goes to you. And then it's the same thing, which is what's open now, and we've already started processing, starting in October, the forgiveness of these loans. So same thing, the borrower goes to their lender, says, okay, here's my forgiveness application for the loan. They're potentially 100% forgivable, the loans. Here's how, my money was spent, whatever else. The lender then pushes that through a portal to the SBA. The SBA approves, says, okay, it is 100% forgivable, conceivably. Then the money goes back to the lender, who then in turn gives it, says, okay, your loan is cleared for the SBA.
Okay, all right.
So as far as educating or walking people through that, it was all hands on deck. I mean, I have never seen, there is a stigma with government employees that, they just sit there and don't do much or what have you. I could not be more proud to be in federal service and public service from the work that I saw done by our team members. I'm talking from, and for instance, Rob, who's supposed to be here today, 1 week, I think him and I were working from 7 in the morning on Monday, probably until 8 or 9 at night on Friday. I mean, maybe we slept. I don't like that. We did sleep. So let me be truthful on that. But it was, okay, what do people need? Where do we need to be? What do we need to talk to them about? Who's calling us that had a group of, even if it's 5 people that just needed answers on it was, okay, we got it. Or these people, they can go over here and be addressed. Or we would farm out again to our district offices. Like I said, we have 3 there and 3 physical locations there in Ohio. and then a remote worker in Dayton as well. And it was all hands on deck. And for the most part, it was that education process of, because people, either they hadn't used SBA before, or they didn't understand, well, why are you doing it this way? It doesn't make any sense. Well, we administer the law. So the law was written by your congressperson. You don't like it, talk to them. But here's what the law is, and we're going to help you as much as we can to get all that you can from this.
Yeah. It's been a big help. And great questions today. We here at Questline are going to continue working with all of you to develop strategies and messaging plans to support your customers throughout the pandemic and beyond. But it's time to bring today's discussion to a close. So a big thank you to Andrea and Katie for taking time to share their insights and advice, and thank all of you for joining us today. Maureen, I'm going to pass it back to you for the closing housekeeping remarks.
Sure, thanks, Mike. And I would like to thank all of you for attending our webinar today. As a reminder, the presentation materials and the playback link to the recording of today's webinar will be emailed to you within the next couple of days. Should you have additional questions or feedback, please don't hesitate to contact us. Remember to also keep December 17th open for our next webinar in our series, where we will discuss diversity and inclusion, strategies for energy utilities. Thanks again for attending, and have a great day, everyone.